The reality of World War II is brought brutally to life in Steven Spielberg's mesmerizing epic, Saving Private Ryan. Stay with us.
Get ready for the 3324 podcast, where lifelong friends Dean Legiro and Eric Kuber share their love of all things music and movies. Dean has directed short films and is a music trivia buff. And Eric, trained in audio engineering, brings his extensive knowledge of music and film to the conversation as they discuss, debate, and celebrate their favorite albums, films, and much more.
Welcome, friends, to the 3324 podcast. Kevin, did that sound correct?
It sounded great.
Okay. Sean, was that grammar correct? Brought brutally to life?
You are the wordsmith around here, Dean.
Really? Coming from the teacher.
Well, there you go. Don't have to look
There it
any
is.
further.
Right.
Don't even bother to ask me because I don't know.
Eric, how was it? Stamp of approval given?
No, it's fine.
Grade A, good.
What are you worried about?
I want to make sure that we're presenting good material to our listeners. They deserve it for their.
Yes.
They don't pay anything. Wait, they don't pay anything. So they still deserve it. They still deserve our best each and every week, which is what we give them each and every week at the 3324 podcast. So thank everybody for joining us for this episode. If you're new, welcome aboard. We've been waiting here. The four of us have been waiting for your arrival, and now we can start an episode now that you have gotten here. Do us a favor, though. If you're listening on your favorite podcast provider, go ahead and hit the follow. This way you get a notification. If you're watching us on YouTube, go ahead and like and subscribe. That lets you know when new stuff drops there. And that's we do a little more uploading on YouTube because we're doing some of our back catalog as well. We're uploading. So there's some extra stuff, but it's old anyway. It's, when we were
But it's
when
old.
we were young and dumb. We didn't know what we were doing when we first started. It's we were all serious. Oh, the Doors, a very important group from the 60s. And, their impact on society should not be diminished.
I
Now the wheels are off the wagon. So let's get the wheels back on the wagon. With this episode, we've got two guests here. Let's go with Mr. Sean Grady, his first appearance of 2024. Welcome aboard, sir.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me on. Happy New Year.
Our resident history buff. So it's a great episode for that. So
matching the guest with the subject matter.
That's right. Yeah.
That's my forte. Also, he's Emmy nominated. He didn't win, but I thought about it. I didn't know, if you're not going to win an Emmy, you might as well lose to Carol Burnett, right? Like if you're gonna lose, I said this to Eric, right? It wasn't it was Carol Burnett that won in your category, right?
It was Tim Robinson for I Think You Should Leave, but
I thought it was Carol Burnett.
Carol Burnett that I'm in the broadcast because I was in the same line of seats. So when she won, I saw where that camera guy was and led the standing ovation. And
did you tug on your ear to make it a memeable moment?
My friend, I would.
Oh, I thought you were in the same category as Carol Burnett. I thought that was in the same thing. Okay.
No, it was the same night though.
Yeah, same night.
Legend. So,
and how was that? How was that Emmy experience? How was it being in the audience and rubbing elbows with?
It was magical, like seriously. And I think being there made the loss not feel like anything. We were up first, which was nerve-wracking. But
then you got to relax the rest of the time. Yeah.
That's the thing. For the next 3 hours, you just sit there and everybody else is like really antsy and nervous. And you're just like, just waiting for the party to start.
Awesome. We are so proud of you, Kevin. And
thank you.
And we wish you luck on your future producing endeavors for AMC or wherever. I'm sure there'll be more. We look forward to more Emmy nominations and continuing to call you Emmy nominated. Eric and I are our personal interior podcast nominated for best podcast. We nominate ourselves each year. And we have a ceremony and it's the two of us and there's two winners. Everybody goes home happy.
Wow.
Kudos to us.
Congratulatory.
Of course, I almost broke my arm patting myself on the back.
I know he's in rare form tonight, man. Boy.
on a Monday night, nonetheless.
Right?
A Monday night.
Right? It's Monday. It's Monday. Yeah.
There is no reason for this amount of excitement on this podcast, except for this movie. I'm so excited about this film. Let's get into it. Let's do the stats. And then I'm sure there's going to be a lot to unpack and unravel and celebrate and impersonate or anything. There's a lot here. So let's kind of let's get to it. This was released in July of 1998, directed by Steven Spielberg, written by Robert Rodat. The budget was $65 to $70 million. Seems like it would be a lot more. Seems like a something of this scale. Would it be a lot more, but hey, we'll go with it. The good news is, you know what? There was a $482 million box office return on this little bad boy. So, being well, actually, there was a reason why the budget was lower. I'll get into that a little bit. It won a bunch of Oscars: Best Director, Best Cinematography, Best Film Editing, Best Sound Effects, Best Sound Effects Editing, and Best Picture. Oh, no, wait, it didn't win Best Picture because Shakespeare in Love won Best Picture that year. Okay. If we could go back and relitigate some of the Oscar Best Picture Oscars, I think this would probably be the first year that would get a look back. I did see Shakespeare in Love. Did everybody see Shakespeare in Love?
I did in the theater.
In the theater, yeah.
Yeah, I saw it in the theater that the year that it came out too.
Yep. It's not a bad film. It was a great film. It
was entertaining.
Right.
It does not compare to this.
No.
In no way, shape, or form, and especially based on all the Oscars. Usually, you win Best Director, you should be getting Best Picture.
I was just about to say that. Yeah.
I could see. I just don't get it. I still don't understand it all these years later, but. That's the way it is, but they did get a bunch of best cinematography. Obviously, this had to be a shoo-in for the scope of this film and some of the groundbreaking techniques that they used to film this. Is just absolutely stunning. Everybody saw this in the theaters?
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Okay. I feel bad for people today that, watching it at home and renting it and have, you can have the biggest, you can have the best version, the Blu-ray, the 4K. I can tell you that this is, I can remember seeing this film and I can remember still the visceral reaction I had to the first 20 minutes of the film. To this day, my jaw, I literally remember having to pick my jaw up off the ground after seeing that. And you don't it's impactful here at home, but in the theater and us seeing that for the first time and seeing something like this for the first time, and you feel the same, Kevin? Was it that type of visceral?
Yeah. Yeah, I was 15, summer vacation with my parents, and my aunt and uncle had seen it, and my aunt said my uncle was cowering in his chair, and so I was a huge Spielberg fan at the time, and he was on such a hot streak, so I was all in. I think we maybe missed first weekend, but we went that second weekend and blown away. And then for home video, this is the movie that made me buy 5.1. I got it so I could hear that DVD again.
Yeah. Sean?
Saw it in the theater. I remember being pretty blown away by it myself. I hadn't seen it in a while, and I'm glad I had that experience in the theater, because watching it at home, it took me right back to the first time I saw it. I remember it stayed with me, but it just, those images and those first 20, 25 minutes, it's like an unforgettable experience, like having, had that in the theater with everybody else. It's definitely a better way to see it on the big screen.
Yeah. Like I said, it was something we hadn't seen before. Eric?
Yep.
I was flabbergasted. A totally different experience from something like Schindler's List, or even like I saw Apocalypse Now at a very young age, and that was a completely profound experience, which taught me how to like hate. If you hate a movie, it's still good to hate a movie because the reaction you get from that, because it wasn't what I expected. This was pretty more straightforward, but I was still not expecting that in the first 20 minutes. And to this day, I'm still scratching my head as to why, aside from the first 20 minutes, that it got some heat. I remember critics were like, oh, this could be a perfect movie if it weren't so sentimental. And I don't know what they're talking about in this film. I really don't, but I guess we'll get there. But yeah, I mean, it's just, I could see some of maybe, what is it? The music? What is it? The tribute to the veterans kind of aspect to it. I don't know, but I have no idea what critics had such a problem with. Oh, it's too sentimental.
They were just angry. They were just angry pants.
Well, yeah, but that's the thing.
That's all. They just needed something.
Spielberg in no way, shape, or form wore this with kid gloves at all. I mean, he really outdid himself with this film, and
he really went for it, and brought something different too. Especially when looking at his previous discography, and he just came off of the previous year doing the sequel to Jurassic Park, Lost World. So Schindler's List was a few years in the rearview mirror, and he had revisited Jurassic Park again, and was getting, it was like, oh, you could make a case that, oh, he's back into that mode of the kid friendly stuff, and then he arrives with this. Let me give you a little behind the scenes stuff. There's some interesting information here. The story was from Robert Rodat, was based on the Nyland brothers. From Stephen Ambrose's book about World War II. Also, and they mention them in the movie, the Sullivan brothers, the Fighting Sullivans, was another set of brothers that were real life. There
were 5 of them. Yeah, there were 5 brothers that all went down on the same ship at the Battle of Guadalcanal.
That was the precedent. Yeah, they changed. They came up with the rule that no siblings could serve in the same unit or in the same space. Yeah.
And if they also came up with the edict that if something like this happened, they would take the one, if one was still alive, they would remove them from service. Yeah. And then also, they mentioned the Bixby brothers, which is a Civil War. They're mentioned in the movie as well, but so this is not something you would think that this might be something so unique, but not very. Especially during wartime, that was, you were called to do your duty. And these kids, literal kids were had this set, that's why they're called the greatest generation is they went out and did this stuff, which is just amazing. Anybody know who the original director was that was hired to do this film?
Oh,
I'm going to say 2 words, and I want to watch your reactions. The original director that was and he was hired was Mr. Michael Bay.
Yes, I've read that.
Oh,
can you? Thank God. So there is a God up there somewhere that Michael Bay did not get his hands on.
Well, you should have said what you should have said was Pearl Harbor. That's all you need to say there. I mean, that was a pipiece of shit. I'm sorry.
He couldn't get his mind around the story.
Yeah.
It was, to his credit, he said it was kind of beyond him. He just couldn't find the hook for him. So he passed on it. Scott Frank and Frank Darabont do uncredited rewrites on this. So Robert Rodat needed a little bit of help. Frank Darabont swooped in there. For the Tom Hanks role of John Miller, we'll go through the cast in a little bit. There was 2 actors that were being looked at first, and both of them at this point were pretty high up in their careers. Mel Gibson and Harrison Ford for Captain John Miller. I could see Mel Gibson, maybe. I can't see Harrison Ford with the finger pointing. You kill that Nazi,
Yeah.
I don't know. What do you think?
I think it would have been too much. I think
that would have put it over.
It would have put it over. I mean, the fact that he had worked, he's Indiana Jones. He'd been in a couple World War II movies in the
And he had done
70s.
done the Jack Ryan stuff too by this
Yeah.
point. So he was,
Yeah.
Air Force One, right, Sean? Like all that kind of,
I just think it would have been a different movie. I'm not saying he couldn't have done it. It just Tom Hanks had that quality about him that he wasn't a tough guy, but he was tough. Like they loved him. They would. I don't know. It just this everyman quality. Like it's just a guy, just a teacher who answered the call of duty, and here he is leading his men, just doing the best he can. I think that's the right kind of guy for this. I just do. I just think that it works.
Yeah, because that plays against the type, Kevin, right, of the gung-ho World War II films of John Wayne and Storming the Beach, and having the everyman in Tom Hanks. And to Eric's point, this might be why I think some of the complaints might be because of Tom Hanks. They think, oh, he's too likable, right? And that's the sentimentality angle of he's in the Henry Fonda, he's that kind of Jimmy Stewart guy, and it's like that kind of thing. Kevin, what do you kind of a little bit of that?
Tom Hanks is America in terms of like, that ideal picket fence American man who like you can trust to look after your kids. You'd have a good time on a date. You'd have him do your wedding for you. And then Spielberg is just the epitome of like the American director. And then American heroism in World War II is as like cinematic as you can get. Like it's a perfect formula. The press release of this, exactly what you're getting, and this movie completely delivers it.
Yeah. I would argue that too. It's like it's inspired casting actually, because to have somebody like Tom Hanks come in, and when you think about the actual war, and you think about how many Hollywood actors actually served, I think, all the cameos in this movie speak to that. Like I thought it was brilliant that Spielberg casted people like Ted Danson.
Yep, leave it. We're going to get to the cast.
All right. But you know what I'm saying? Like, but to me, it's that having Tom Hanks in the lead, it speaks to that, because that's what really happened in the war. Like to have these, baseball players went off to war. They weren't exempt from any of this.
Yeah.
So I kind of look at it that way, and the fact that Hanks is he's the everyman, but he's not overtly like, but he's just worn out. He's just tired. Yeah. He plays that so well.
Yeah.
And he just wants to
get home to his wife.
Just wants to get home.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's So they secure Tom Hanks. They get Tom Sizemore, who at the time was kind of knee deep in some addiction issues. He had some drug problems. They said, listen, we're going to hire you, but you have to take regular drug tests. And if you fail one, we will not hesitate to remove you and reshoot whatever you're in. And and rest in peace. I love Tom Sizemore. He was such a great actor. Yeah. He is like a big bear. He's like a huggable bear. He's a salty. He's a little, but he's such a great foil to Tom Hanks. Yes. For Private Ryan, there were two actors before they got to Matt Damon. Mr. NPH, Neil Patrick Harris, was considered, and Edward Norton, who was a pretty hot commodity at that point. I could see Neil Patrick Harris. He's got that really young look and that kind of innocent look. Edward Norton, Sean?
Maybe not, but
yeah.
I mean, the Private Ryan character is important, but I feel like, it's, I'm not saying this film is called Saving Private Ryan, but I can, I don't remember Matt Damon so much about in that movie, not because of anything, the character of Ryan, could I have lived with it? Sure. But,
no, I think he would have made it, because Edward Norton has a reputation of being very esoteric and just sort of like diving in, and like even with the Incredible Hulk, he was like, "Oh, this is a serious movie. This is not a fun kind of thing." And we saw how that went. So I think he would have brought way too much attention to himself. I think with this.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
and
could see
Kevin,
him-
Kevin, he declined because he was gonna he actually was committed to making that family film, American History X.
Yes.
But like, can't you see Edward Norton insisting that he be on the poster of Saving Private Ryan?
Yes,
Absolutely.
And like make it about him. But meanwhile, like Matt Damon wasn't in the marketing. My wife
No.
asked me, she was like, where was Matt Damon in his career at this point? Like, what was he the selling point to this? I was like, I don't think anyone knew he was in it. Like, it was a surprise
Yes.
when he shows up.
Yeah, he had just come off. I mean, 96 was Good Will Hunting, and that was kind of their breakthrough. Was his breakthrough? So, this probably filmed, and if it came out in 98, I think
it was filmed in 97.
Yeah, so they were shooting in 97, and I think Spielberg saw Good Will Hunting and said, like, that's the guy. Like that seeing him in that performance really sealed it. So let's get into the cast now. So we've got, and this is one of the other parallel when Eric was saying about how many actors were in World War II and stuff. And then think of movies like The Longest Day, which had that deep cast of actors, like everybody in Hollywood was in that. And that's the way this feels too with Tom Hanks as Captain John Miller, Edward Burns, who was, you don't really hear much from him now, but in this time he was pretty hot because he was a writer, director, Brothers McMullen, and She's the One, and that kind of stuff. Tom Sizemore as Mike Horvath, Jeremy Davies as Upham, and we'll have to spend some time on him a little bit later on. Vin Diesel, Vin Diesel was actually homeless at the time of that he shot this film. He was not Vin Diesel yet. He was a struggling actor trying to get stuff done. He's Adrian Caparzo, Adam Goldberg as Mellish, who was great in Dazed and Confused. Barry Pepper as Jackson, the sniper. Giovanni Ribisi as Wade, the medic. It breaks my heart. Matt Damon as James Francis Ryan. Dennis Farina. Here we go, Eric. We're going into like the second tier. Dennis Farina.
The cameo.
As Walter, the officer who gives the mission. And he was on Law and Order probably around this time. He might have been on Law and Order. He was one of the detectives on Law and Order. He's got that look. He's got that that army look, that wartime hero look. Ted Danson as Fred Hamill. He kind of didn't. When I was watching it today, I'm like, I was like, it's Ted Danson. Like, he was good in it, but it was kind of like it's Ted Danson.
Yeah, but again,
I don't know.
But it's Ted Danson. But he's but he's serving. He's there. That's how I take it. It's like he's supposed to be Ted Danson. I think that might be the point. I don't know. I'm just probably looking too much into it, but I just feel like some of that was the great thing of these cameos. They just pop up and they're acting pretty much like themselves. Like, Paul Giamatti was.
Paul Giamatti. Yeah.
Let me wait. Let me go down the list.
They're in order.
Okay. They're in order.
By the way, Dennis Farina was Crime Story, not Mike Hammer. That was Stacey Keach. That's going to be
Crime Story.
Yeah.
Ted Danson, the great Harv Presnell as George C. Marshall. Last probably
look like him.
And most notably known before this was Fargo. He was the father. No Gene, no money.
My damn daughter.
No Gene, no money. Going to McDonald's, but you can't eat your dinner. Great actor. Bryan Cranston, very young. I didn't know he was missing a limb, but I guess I don't know how they did. Breaking Bad. I don't know how they shot around that, Kevin. But,
CGI, yeah.
Very young. He was baby faced. Bryan Cranston. Yeah. David Wall. He's one of the other officers. I think he's the first officer that the woman brings the letters to. A very popular. You've seen his face. Character actor all over the place. Nathan Fillion as the first James Ryan. Right. He would go on to success with Firefly and some other things. Another young. He was baby faced as well. It's like, oh my god. It's like, kid. Paul Giamatti.
Yep.
As a war weary sergeant in Nuno. I just saw a thing with Paul Giamatti. Variety or some of these other things, they do great. They get actors and they go through their filmography and they ask him about it.
Yeah.
And Paul Giamatti was like, I got to the set and they didn't know what to do with me. I had no character. They didn't know anything. And the thing with the foot was really happening to him. Like his foot was bothering him.
Oh, wow.
So they kind of decided to put that, they like made that the character. So he sits down to like, fix his foot, and then the board falls and all the Germans are behind the door. Like he goes, I didn't really, they didn't have anything for me. We didn't know anything about it, about the character, what we were going to do. And it just kind of came up on set, which was pretty neat. Ryan Hurst as Mandelson. Ryan Hurst is what from Remember the Titans, and then later he's like this big hulking biker in Sons
of Anarchy.
Yeah, Sons of Anarchy. He's the deaf, the guy that knows Ryan but can't hear. That was like the only comedic really part of this movie that kind of gave you a little breather, a little levity, especially even with Tom Hanks. He was kind of playing into a little bit of his comedic timing as well. That's like that's enough right there. I mean, you could take any 4 or 5 people from this and have a great film, but to have them all in there is just amazing. Now, and then of course Dale Dye. We need to talk. Anytime you make a movie about the military, Sean, right? It's Dale Dye.
Yep. He's going to train you. You're going to the boot camp.
He's going to train you. He was in Platoon. I think he got killed.
Yeah. The tent.
The guy ran in with Oliver Stone, and Dale Dye got killed. The bomber ran in with the vest in Platoon. He got killed. But yeah, anytime you need, he became the de facto like military advisor, Dale Dye, for Hollywood. Anytime you needed something, you got Dale Dye, and then he also like they throw him in the movie too because he's good. He can talk the talk, and he knows how to do that.
Looks so part everything.
Yeah, exactly. He put the cast through their paces. They did go to 5 or 6 day boot camp, but they left They did not send Matt Damon to the boot camp with these guys because they wanted that animosity. Spielberg wanted Ryan to feel like an outsider. They didn't want him to get to pal around with him, so they had that kind of feeling towards him, which you see.
Smart move.
Yeah, and then one last little behind the scenes thing. I said earlier, I think I know the reason why the budget was under control is because Spielberg shot this in 50 days. He really wanted to tear through this. He wanted to get as many shots done in a day as possible. The guys didn't get a lot of sleep. He really kind of put them through their paces to not let them get a kind of a breather, so they could feel that war, that weariness of war as much as you can replicate.
Of course.
So yeah, he was really trying to get through this, shoot as quick as possible. And really aggressively shooting, which, and he said, and because of the scope of like the first 20 minutes, he's like, we got to get this, we can't keep resetting these types of things and redoing it. And especially the way Janusz Kaminski was filming it, he was using a certain type of film stock that he's like, if we're either going to get it or not, and we won't know until we develop it. So, and Spielberg is like 80% of the time we got what we needed pretty quickly in a couple of takes. So he was able to move through.
Impressive.
So, yeah. So let's take it from the beginning. The movie starts with the beach assault, the assault on Normandy. And these guys are kind of, well, it starts off with a guy. He does a little trickery, right? It starts off with this older guy visiting the Normandy cemetery. With his family, and he goes and he breaks down, and we get the close up of his face, and we're led to believe, or at least I am, or you guys could tell me that character is Tom Hanks, right? Is that agreed?
I thought so when I first saw it.
Yeah. Right? First,
sure.
Right? Sean, same thing. Like you thought the old guy because the way they close up on his eyes, and then
it's
you go to the beach, and Tom Hanks lifts his head up, and it's the same shot.
Yep.
Right. So we think,
it's the same transition, young Indy into Harrison Ford in Last Crusade.
Nice.
That's right.
It's like a match with the.
That's a good comparison.
You're right.
It's got to be Tom Hanks.
Yeah. This belongs in a museum. So do you.
Yeah, but I was I was actually looking for that though when I saw it again, and it doesn't do it right away because
there's some scenes in between.
There's a scene in between with the the armor plating and stuff, and then you see
and the boat. But then he lifts up to the same.
But later on, the eyes though they do have a close up of his eyes when he's like when he says quite a view, and then they really
they do it a few times.
Yeah. So that's where, to me, that's where I got the impression that was.
They
the
kind
old
of
man
signal
right
like this is the guy. It's him.
Yeah.
It's this many years later.
Yeah.
And then what we see for the next 20 minutes is, like I said, my jaw was agape in the theater, literally. The way this is shot, this was a new style of filmmaking for Spielberg. Also, he didn't want to plan. He didn't storyboard because he wanted the cameras to be dynamic and go where they needed to go. And it felt like a documentary. You know, it was shot, you know, almost to the point I remember in the theater that the camera was so shaky. I'm like, I don't know if I can keep watching it because it was that almost it was that manic and that kinetic and that out of control. Sean, is that kind of get like that documentary feel, like you're there?
Well, I guess as close as you could get without being there. It just seemed like you're from the perspective of someone storming that beach. It's amazing. And what, you know, the panning and the moving over and then the lack of sound and like your ears getting blown out. Just, I mean, it was very well done. The different perspectives of being on the ground, being like eye level. It's, yeah, it's like nothing. You definitely, like you said, it's like it's shaking. You almost have to take a moment to look away for a minute just to reorient yourself.
Yeah. And there's so many things just happening around you. It doesn't stop. And so it's not the classic, Kevin, right? Not the classic, like, storytelling stuff we would expect to see from Spielberg. And maybe that's what made it so jarring, is that this is just, you're seeing one guy on fire. You're seeing another guy picking up his arm. You're seeing another guy, you know, it was just almost too much to take, right?
Yeah, it's pure chaos, and it's pretty much all at eye level. So there's no break where you're like, okay, I'm a viewer elsewhere looking down on all this, and yeah, this is chaotic, but you're dead center in all of this, and somebody right next to you might blow up. And I think my favorite is the guy that gets it in the helmet, and he looks at it, oh, you lucky bastard, and then it's
ping.
Just the second shot gets him.
Yeah, it's tough. It's a tough thing to watch. And I was particularly struck with, it's almost like you're with the cameraman and it's like, oh, get that guy right there. And it's like the camera moves over and you see the guy like just right in the corner of the shot, like, like mom, like so many guys on the ground, like screaming for their mom. And it's just like, get that guy right there. Like you could just hear the guy, like, you know, move the camera there and there, you know, like the direction. Yeah. But it's like, but yeah, you're like, you know, like Kevin was saying, like right there.
You also get the impact of the weapons more than you do in any other war film. Like, you know, people get shot in war. It's like, you know, they go down. But this is like, you see like the bullets almost tearing off limbs, ripping through guys.
Yeah.
Ripping through two guys, hitting the guys in the water. Like just and it's just like, and then hitting the flammable packs, them going on fire. It's just, you can't believe like all that, like, you know, people get shot in war, but you don't realize they die like this, like horrifically. Like it was very,
you make a good point, Sean.
Canteen.
Yeah. The canteen shot?
Like water empties out of the canteen. It's like, oh, the dude's canteen got it. That was lucky. And then it's not water anymore. It's blood. The guy's bleeding out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think, Sean, you make a really good point that these aren't glorified deaths. It's very matter of fact. The bullets are just like penetrating into people. Yep. And there's not that big, you know, they're just falling or they're just all of a sudden they're dead. Or, you know, Tom Hanks is dragging a guy that got wounded and then there's an explosion and he's dragging half the body. And it's just like, you know, it's an assault on a different set of senses, you know, for action. Like we're used to, especially in the 90s, we were used to the Michael Bay Armageddons and explosions and over the top. And this kind of brought that down. And even I think Dale Dye said, like when they were doing the original explosions, he's like, Steven, no. He goes, those explosions are too big. That's not the way it was. Explosions weren't that big. Like it brought it down to like a more realistic level where it wasn't like a grenade and the whole thing blows up, you know?
Yeah.
But there was that damage. You'd see people getting damaged from it. And it was just so intense and solemn. I remember in the theater, it was quiet. Like theaters are quiet, but I seem to remember just like
like a
a
Paul.
different
Yeah.
a stillness.
Everybody was agape. Their mouths were like,
Yeah, it was a stillness in the
people. I think
theater.
some people were. I recall a couple people getting up because they just couldn't take it. They couldn't take
Yeah.
the. I guess they got dizzy.
It could be.
They get sick to their stomachs because they got so dizzy from it. They had to take a break. They had to get up and come back but yeah, I was particularly struck too with the bullets, and it didn't just not on the land, but in the water, guys getting hit underwater. You're talking about maybe a couple of feet of water, and still the guy drowned because of the weight of the pack.
Yeah, he couldn't get his pack off. Yeah,
he couldn't get his pack off in time, and he's just being stepped on as he's like on the, and it's just such shallow water. What a way to go,
Yeah, no,
like
it's
holy.
horrible.
It's horrific. It's absolutely
or having your ammo taken off of you while you're lying there injured, and they have to go scrounge for ammo, and they're just taking your ammo and leaving you there, and the guy's like crying, he's in pain, and they're brutal. And to Eric's point about people leaving, there were World War II veterans that saw this and did leave. Also, they said this was it was too real. It was too much for them. It was too close to home, which I guess is a blessing and a curse, because like I said before that, everything was gung ho. Let's raise the flag, and war, war is hell, but we've got it. We're America. And this showed it, in a totally different way, and was jarring for a lot of those veterans as well.
Yeah.
So basically they end up storming the beach, but that's not the movie's about rescuing this person whose 4 or 3 other brothers were lost, in different theaters, different campaigns in the war. And it's like, well, we got to bring this guy home. So that's the mission. And this ragtag group of 8 guys gets, kind of handpicked for the mission, with the addition of an interpreter, because their interpreter got killed. So they get Jeremy Davies as Upham, who has not seen a day of fighting. He's a writer, and he translates and does map stuff and stuff like that. So he's kind of the odd man out in the group as already.
Yeah.
Because all these other guys know each other. There, there's that which would lead to Band of Brothers. There's that brotherhood that these people have. I guess let's talk about Upham. I think we need to kind of, hopefully everybody has seen this film, but his trajectory. Let me start from the end, and we'll go around. Sean, was he a coward? Or was he so much of a pacifist?
No, I think he was afraid. I don't. A coward. I mean, he was. I think he tried to tell them, like, I'm not the guy to take. Please don't take me. Yeah, I guess that is. But he was afraid. He was legitimately afraid, and I think that's something that gets lost about war, is that it's not all valor. That. Mm-hmm. Guys are legitimately afraid. They cried. God, they called for their mothers. It's heartbreaking when you hear it. They hid. They, just like you see that one guy on the beach just cowering behind, like he doesn't want to move. I mean, he's legitimately scared. He's afraid, and that he's afraid he's not up to it. And
yeah,
we
later see that he wasn't wrong.
Mm-hmm. Well, he was, Kevin. He wasn't, but then he was, right? I mean, he kind of redeemed his arc with Steamboat Willie in a weird way. The character, they call the character Steamboat Willie.
That day late, dollar short, though.
Yeah.
What do you think, Kevin?
It's a little late to act like he's rounding up 8 prisoners single-handedly. Like he didn't step up when it counted. And look, it's hard to defend the guy. Mm-hmm. And I got to say, if I were in the same position, running from, battle point to battle point, and I'm the guy with the ammo and I got to get there real fast, but I have to run out in the line of fire, I don't know that I'm doing it either. But Upham is like, he just screws everything up, because he could have walked up 5 more steps and saved Goldberg, but he was just paralyzed.
Yeah.
And look, he's also in the middle of World War II. not everybody is going to be a hero.
Yeah.
Right.
So like he's kind of got that moment of redemption, but it's also kind of like you were the weakest link in this squad, but you might still be eligible for a medal for this.
Yeah, in a weird way.
You're going to take this to your grave that you didn't help so much.
Yeah,
I mean, you're the guy who survived, so you're telling the story.
Eric, he had a second shot at redemption too, right? Because remember, he's in the ditch when all the Germans go by.
Yeah,
and he pokes his head up, and he sees all of these guys in a line
mm-hmm.
firing on the bridge. Like at the very last one, they said, "Get to the Alamo."
Right.
He could have taken the gun and just wiped out that line of guys too. So he had more than one opportunity, right? So what do you think? Did he just totally? I mean, was it shell shock? Was it that fog of war where you just freeze?
I think it's open for interpretation, but I think, I think it's a little bit of everything like that. I mean, I don't think it's outward cowardice. It's just he's just not. He was not meant for this. He was not, him shooting the guy point blank. We all think it's great because the guy deserved it. Because he's the guy that shot Miller, right? Steamboat Willie. He took the fatal shot and. Perhaps that was the reason. I don't know, but it was like, then he essentially just becomes, well, I'm just going to murder this guy. I didn't really buy the fact that he just turned on like that. That was probably one part of the movie where I was just kind of like, I don't know. So it is kind of out there. And I don't, as far as him getting a medal or anything like, I don't know. I don't know about that. It's heartbreaking to see him, heartbreaking to see all these other guys, and he survives, and it's just like, but you're kind of left a little bit empty there because because you don't want him to be the guy to to survive. You know what I mean? Like, and that's the shining moment. It's because he killed Steamboat Willie, and it's just no, I don't know. Yeah, I'm
after
with
it surrendered. Yeah,
I'm with Kevin on this. I just no. I don't buy. I don't.
Now that harkens back. So I want to leap backwards in time.
Yeah.
To the last interaction with the previous interaction with Steamboat Willie, because you've got, they decide to assault this gun that's just in the middle of nowhere, and most of the team doesn't want to do it. They're like, "There's no, we can bypass this, still do our mission. We don't really need to do this."
Yeah.
And Tom Hanks, Miller is like, well, we can't just leave it for someone else to stumble on him and get killed. So, we're fighting a war. Don't forget, So there's some dissension in the ranks. So they end up, this is where they meet Steamboat Willie. He's like the only German that's left alive. And the rest of the guys want to kill him. They're like, we're just going to execute him. There's nowhere to leave. There's nowhere to bring him. Yeah. Because we're in the middle of nowhere.
Right.
But Miller and Upham both don't want to kill him, but it's for different reasons, though.
Yeah.
Right. There is a contrast there, right? Upham is like, don't do this because it's against like the code of war, and he's a POW and you can't kill him. Whereas Miller at this point in his life is like, I just can't. The more I kill, the farther away I feel.
Right.
Yeah. So I think that I don't know if that.
I think it's told from the perspective because Hanks has been in the shit for so long. He's ready to go home, man. He's worn out. He's been probably through every major campaign that they threw at him. Africa, the whole bit. I mean, you're talking about almost, it's close to the end of the war here. Opham's just there. Another thing to kind of realize too is the fact that you don't forget that Hanks was always protecting Upham. You're with me, stay back, don't get involved in this, hang back. And then when the chaos of the bridge was ensued, he was kind of left alone. He was kind of left to his own device. So that could explain a little bit there as to why he couldn't, do much, being that he really wasn't involved in anything else prior to this because he was always being told to hang back because Hanks knew
because he wasn't a soldier. Like
exactly,
he didn't have the wherewithal.
Right. That's right.
That you make a good point.
But the chaos, because everybody was scattered, everybody was kind of like every man for himself here. Now there is no plan here anymore. I mean, we're in, this it's calling back to the beginning.
Freestyling, yeah. Yeah.
of the chaos of the beach. So that is it's a nice bookend there. So I think
Yeah.
that just occurred to me actually that that was the case. So maybe I don't know. I mean, Upham again, he could have stepped up, and I think I would have liked it more to see him save Mellish and step up, being that he was so much in the background before, and then him just finally growing a pair of balls and just going up those stairs and doing what he, and that would have been great. I mean, I would have liked to have seen him become a hero, being that it was his first turn and his first, but the innocence is lost, and I guess that was his moment of that,
and that probably would have been unrealistic, right, Kevin? We probably would have been like, well, he was he's a wimpy, and now all of a sudden he comes in guns blazing. So, I think, Sean, that would have been the thing that we would have liked to have had happen. But I think it's more impactful that it didn't happen, and then and how the German just walks down the stairs. That he doesn't even give him a second glance, really.
Doesn't even respect him.
Right, Sean?
So you're not even worth. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah.
And that made it worse. I think he was waiting for him to be, get his head blown off or kicked it, and the guy just doesn't even bother. He just walks past him, which makes him feel worse.
Yeah, it was like I was gonna say, it's even more of a slap in the face that you're not even worth. Like, I could just have an extra kill under my belt, and it's not even worth it.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Because you're not even going to do anything. It's not. It's there's nothing to it.
I'm curious to know in that moment too, like what he was actually telling Mellish as he was driving the knife.
Right.
What was he telling him? Was he saying, just let it, this is going to happen? I kind of got that impression that's probably the case. Listen, there's nothing you could do. I have to do this, that kind of thing.
Or easy, be quiet, be quiet. Like trying to,
God, that was such a chilling scene.
From what I read, that scene was actually a lot longer and a lot worse. And I think the guy that was screened it for the first time said to Spielberg, like, this is too much. It's actually it was more protracted. So he cut it down. Yeah, that's one of the, it's like you've to that point, to the point of when Mellish gets killed, we've seen people die every which way, but that one was the most intimate.
Yep.
Yeah. Because he's like, right, Kevin,
he's the guy in the eye,
fighting for his life, and he's at the point of like begging, like, no, let's, and you see that knife just kind of just slowly go. It's not like a big dramatic. It's like just slowly go in him, and he dies, and like as if we hadn't had enough already. Right. Spielberg just kind of continues to kind of give us this gritty realism of it, and like I said, like to Eric's point, it's like we would have liked Upham to come in, Kevin, right, with guns blazing, but this is more.
You would have loved that. I mean, the guy is like close enough to kiss him, and it's and it's hopeless, and you just want to see Upham come into that door frame and blow the guy's brains out.
Yep.
But it just doesn't happen.
It speaks to Spielberg. I credit him for that. It's like because and that's where I'm, where you could argue, oh yeah, this is too, it's too easy. It's like Spielberg, like it may be being a little too, hands off. Like it's too much. It's whatever. I'm glad. I applaud him for scenes like that because
for not taking the easy way out.
It shows the brutality and it just
because that would have spoken to those old time war films, right, where the heroes come in and and it would have kind of especially at this point in the movie so late, it would have been a little more disingenuous for that.
Right, and it almost reminds me like the end of Die Hard, right, when the guy who couldn't bring himself to raise his gun kills the last terrorist at the end, just before he gets John McClane and his wife, right? So you get that, and that's right in that movie. Yeah, I think in this movie, this is right, even though it's not what we want.
Yeah,
I think it makes it more of a powerful view. The fact that you didn't get it, he didn't do it. He chickened out, and.
Yeah, the horrors of war. I mean, you see it warts and all on the American side. It wasn't just these were kids. He was a kid. He looked like a kid, Jeremy Davies. I mean, these are like kids that are expected to to go do this, to go defend the country without any training or
And he
just,
said it.
you know,
He said,
yeah.
I'm probably not the guy to take. You don't want, you know,
Yeah.
he was shaking, right? Like, can I take my typewriter? He's like, no, you can't take your typewriter with you.
Yeah. Leave all that. You won't need it.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about the relationship between Captain Miller and Mike Horvath, with Tom Sizemore. Tom Sizemore is almost like the consigliere.
Yes.
Of Tom Hanks, like his trusted advisor, and one of the great, Tom Sizemore he's so great in this film.
Yes.
There was the one scene that really grabbed me, and it was a shot of Sizemore. Is after they did the whole dog tag scene, when they're throwing the dog tags around like poker chips, and Wade comes over and goes, this ain't a game, blah blah blah. So then they go and they find out where Ryan is, and they get the map, and Tom Hanks' hand is shaking, and they have a cut to everybody's kind of looking like down at his hand, and they cut to Tom Sizemore, and he kind of looks at him, but then he kind of gives like a little grin, like almost like an understand, like he wasn't judging him, where everybody else was kind of like, what the hell's going on with this, and there was just that cut to Sizemore's face, and he just kind of looks at him, and he kind of, like he felt for him. He wasn't judging him for it, because he'd known about it, but it was just kind of, he really was just like a gentle giant, Horvath.
Yeah, I think so. And he was kind of the, he was kind of like Tom Hanks, like
he was the bad cop to Hank's good cop.
Well, no, he was kind of like his, more than a consigliere, but more of his protector. Like he knew that Hanks might have been, he's had too much, I think. They probably served together for quite some time.
Yeah.
And he's just like, but I'm used to this kind of thing. And he's obviously not. You see I love when he's like gathering the dirt from each place that they go, and like there's a whole bag full, and right in that moment that he's been there for a long time. Dirt from
he's every sentimental bastard.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Kevin, that the church scene also between Hanks and Sizemore. Yeah. That's where we get to kind of know their history and how much they had been through with the Vecchio, V for Vecchio.
Yeah, I think you learn so much about a character, or even just a person, when you're watching them wait for something. And between the church scene and after they've prepped for the bridge, it kind of calls back to when the guys in Jaws are showing each other their scars. It's like, we've prepped, we know what's coming, we just have to sit here and wait. And you see some people sleep, some people just like have to idle themselves, and some guys it's just like, all right, we've been around each other so much, we never get to talk, but we know we always want to, but we're smarter than to stop and say like, hey, we like start chatting when we shouldn't be. We both know right now is an okay time to talk. And but the church scene and like the prep scene with the Edith Piaf, it's like, that's the human moment when you see these guys, like they've learned so much from each other and about each other, and they haven't had to say a word. But they're soulmates pretty much.
Yeah, they'd been through so much together, and I like their relationship because he at the end when they're at the Alamo, Miller said, Hank says to Sizemore, like, what should we do? And Sizemore's like, I don't know, and Tom Hanks like, no, really, I'm asking you, like what should we do? I really don't know what to do at this point, So really kind of really trusting him to kind of. And he has that great speech, like, what if by some chance we do, do this, and we make it out of here, and saving Private Ryan is the best thing we do, and we've earned, we've all earned our way to home. And maybe that's some of the sentimentality, Eric, that they're talking about. Is that kind of, that's a little bit of the flag waving, but it's fine. It's they've been through all this, and it's such a weird mission that they're on. They're not used to, they're used to having, orders and superiors and fighting and having to do things. And this is just kind of they're wandering, trying to find this guy, like getting intel and then going to a different place.
And not just fighting the enemy, but also fighting themselves too, right? I mean, there's so much of that animosity going on there between, and he's right there at Hanks' side protecting him when Ed Burns wanted to leave, and he's just like, he's like, fuck you all, I'm out of here. And he's just like, that was an intense scene too. Sizemore was excellent in that scene. He's just like, I'm just going to shoot you because I don't like you. But then later on, like to Kevin's point, they're all hanging out. They're all sitting on the steps there with listening to the music, and they seem to be getting along okay now. I mean, they're just, you know what I mean? Like, so they just.
That's how families are, right?
It's an understanding that you get over it, and we're brothers. We got, no matter what, we got to do this together. So
we've got to have each other's back.
But you never say sorry,
right?
You never even have like the talk about it. It's just like, you just it's over.
Yeah.
So Sean, let's talk a little bit about Owen Wade, played by Giovanni Ribisi. It was such a tragic character.
Yeah.
That church scene reveals a lot, right? There's a lot, and he gets an opportunity because you don't really see, actually you see him from the beginning, and he's very kind of, I don't know what's the word I'm looking for. Like when the people are getting shot while he's trying to tend to them, and he stops and he's like yelling at the Germans, like, give us a fucking break, would you? Like, fucking, like he's so passionate about, or like, this just isn't fair. Like we're dropped into this hell, and you can't even let us kind of treat these people,
Mm-hmm.
And he's kind of grabbed because their other medic was killed, I think. So they actually brought Wade along with them. But Sean, talk a little bit about just the church scene.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I think he feels every loss, every guy he's there to save.
Personal. It's personal. It's personal. Yeah,
absolutely. And even with the dog tags, when he was like, "You got to stop that," like this. These guys are watching you play with their dog tags like they're poker chips. But that church scene, when he's talking about his mother and how he knew his mother wanted to talk to him, and he's like, and he just pretended to be asleep. And now that he's so far away from home and he's witnessed so much death and heard guys cry for their mother, and that she may never ever get to speak with him again. And I guess he must have known that his end was near, because I don't know. And then he ends up up getting it and calling for his mother, which it's a different level. Seeing that as an older man now, that had a different effect on me than it did when I saw it when I was a younger guy. So definitely.
Yeah, it's such a great performance by him, and especially in the church scene when he says, he's like, I don't know why I did that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because he went through that whole thing of she would just want to talk and tell me how her day was, and I would lay there, and then they cut back, they cut away, and then they cut back to him, and he's like, I don't know why I did that.
Yep.
And that is so profoundly relatable, isn't it? I think we've all as kids, like at some point or another, don't want to you don't feel like talking to your mom or you
don't want to be bothered.
You don't want to be, and they just want to know about your day. And I think we've all done that, as kids. Yeah. So I mean that was especially heartbreaking. Yeah. So
and then just his scene, his death scene is just another one of just it was probably more impactful than Vin Diesel's. Like Vin Diesel was kind of out of nowhere, but this one is everybody's around him trying to save him.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And then they kind of realize, like when they said, give him, I need the morphine. It's like, give me another one. They're all looking. It's like, he's not going to, and they're like, tell us how to help you. Tell us how to fix you. It's like,
they don't know. And the contrast between Vin Diesel's death and it's this, Vin Diesel died because he thought he was doing something good to say, to save the girl. Let's take the little girl with us and, bring her to the next town, doing something decent. Ribisi got it because Hanks made the decision to and they were all trying to talk him out of it. And look what happened. And that's especially hard on Miller, but that's when he breaks down and and his scene of when he breaks down. Yeah.
I noticed today, Kevin, in watching that scene when he starts crying, he's kind of sitting up on a bunch of rocks and he knows he's breaking down. And what he does is he Tom Hanks decides to sit lower, so he's probably not in the eyesight of other people. Like he knows that this breakdown is coming, but he has it together enough to know, like, I need to not be around people or have people see this.
He can't let them see that, because as far as those guys are concerned, his shield came down as much as it's ever going to come down when they found out he's a school teacher.
Yeah.
Right.
And he seized the mystery away from them because he needed to. Otherwise, one or more of his guys was about to die at the hands of one of the others. And he couldn't afford to also let them see him just be absolutely destroyed by this. He needed them. He needed to illustrate that, like, we got to go on. This is what happens in war, guys. Come on. But the guy was. It broke him.
Yeah, it broke him. He's a leader. Yeah. He's the captain. The captains can't afford to let their any sign of weakness or anything like that, because these guys are looking up to you. They're expecting you to bring them out of it, and yet one by one, they're all. And the whole decision of him to even go on this mission and recruit these guys together, and they're all like, "Why are we doing this? Like, what? What's the point?" We all have mothers.
Yeah. I think, like, we all have mothers.
Yeah.
What makes him so special?
Right.
But that scene of Hanks just breaking down, though, was just so.
I was wondering what Tom Hanks was thinking to even get him, because you could tell he was really, really crying there. I mean, there's no. I don't think he was acting there at all. He must have been thinking of something so traumatic or so in the moment that it just. When he gets up and his eyes are just completely red and just that's not Visine, or they've sprayed him with something to make it. You know what I mean? Like, he's just like, he gets up,
like,
and he's
menthol chips,
right? And you could tell that that took a lot out of him to have that release like that. It's just
Yeah, I think it was something that the character needed, though, too. He, like you said, he's got to be stoic, or he's got to be the rule, the maker of the rules and the enforcer of that stuff. And like you said, complaints go up, they don't go down. But having that scene, and he's a nice guy, and he's jovial. He's a nice guy. He's a nice captain. He's very good at strategy, and he's good at that stuff. He knows his job. He's not like a nice guy that's a pushover. He knows tactical, how to act tactically, but just seeing that breakdown just kind of really brought the film to another level. Like, for everything that he's been through, this finally got to him. Just kind of, I can't take it anymore. Seeing all this death, and then that one was so personal. Like I said, like, shooting people with a gun, 50 yards away is different from the guy begging for his life, like Sean said, and crying for his mother, and you can't do anything about it, and like he said, the more people I kill, the farther away from home I feel. And he said, how am I ever going to explain to my wife, like, days like this? Yeah. How can I ever put this into words?
You almost feel like, you almost feel, you're sorry that he gets, that he gets it, but at the end, but it's almost like he can never be the same. If he had gone home, he would have probably not been the same man, and who knows what kind of relationship he would have had with his wife to put her through that. And you know what I mean? So in a way, you're kind of like relieved for him, because he's at peace, it's like, in knowing that the mission was, successful in that sense, and they did
angel on our shoulder.
Yeah. So, it just,
he has now, like, he's quantified the value of Saving Private Ryan. He has now found, like, a use case of, like, I'm going to tell you why we're helping this guy, and it is to make up for days like this.
Right.
Yeah.
We're going to do something really, really good. Are we all on board or not?
Yeah. Yeah. It was an important message that, especially, the main dissenter was Ed Burns as Ryben, right? He was always mainly the guy that was always poking at this of, why do we need this? He's like, fuck this guy. And, especially when they found like the first Ryan, right? I think he was, Burns was like, fuck that, fuck.
Hey,
this
asshole.
thing.
But you get the impression too that he was pretty. I think there were like different levels of the squad that some of them were probably there for a long time. Some of them maybe a couple of skirmishes. I get the impression that Ed Burns was sort of like in it for a little bit, but he was still in that gung ho kind of mode. He wants to be I want to do something more important than this. I want to really fight the war and. So yeah, I like that there was these different levels of character because it all brought different perspectives of where they're at, the sort of the logistics of the whole thing and the logic of it all. It's just told from all those different, and to have him be so so dismissive, and yet at the end he cries as well. Notice that he breaks down when he sees Miller. So they all have their moment in the film where they're just, distraught and the realization sets in. It's just
except for Barry Pepper gets done dirty, Sean, right?
Yeah.
Up on that sniper's nest and Porker, and it's just like I would have liked to seen more. He is like the typical Southerner kind of, the call him the hillbilly, kissing his crucifix, but what a dead shot. He was a dead shot. And
he was great.
Again, and that's the way it is. Some people don't get the big death scenes, and that was kind of, death is indiscriminate. And I think that's one of the points of this movie is like, it can happen at any time, any way. And this is not going to be the glorified Hollywood thing where everybody gets their death scene and gets their big ending. Right. It's kind of like, that you see that tank turret, like turning towards him and he knows it's coming. He knows he's, they've kind of zeroed in on where he was. And then you see the far shot and you just see the tower crumble, and it's like, oh shit.
Yeah, and what a way to go, because you would think that he would probably meet his match somehow, maybe with another sniper. So you want to see that like sort of moment, and that's not the way he's taken out. He's taken out rather suddenly and just
blunt instrument.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah,
it defies all. What Spielberg does is defy all expectation in this film. Like, you think it's going to go one way, and it just completely, out of nowhere, just boom. It's crazy.
And that
I love that.
I mean, that bridge scene is that movie is bookended with very difficult to watch battle scenes, because I think that bridge. I mean, the guy's getting shot apart on that tank. Again, you see these guys' body and you're like, they're not going to win. And they almost they were pretty much on the verge of defeat until that airstrike came in at the last moment.
Yeah.
But those are two rough battle scenes, bookended in this film.
With the heavy caliber bullets that they were using, those. Yeah, when those guys are on the tank and this heavy caliber gun comes out and it just tears them apart. They're not even like, it's not like getting shot with a bullet. You're getting ripped apart by one or two bullets, and it's just
legs coming off. I was like, oh my God, I forgot about that. It's like,
and
and then the first guy with the sticky bomb,
blew him right up.
He waits too long, and he's like waiting. And it was a matter of fact, all of a sudden, this explosion of red. It's like, oh shit!
We're watching it last night. It's coming, but you're still like jarred. I was watching it with my wife, and she's like, she gasped that when that scene happened. It's coming, but
I forget every time.
I
if I think about it, I remember him just plastering it on that thing, but nope.
Yeah.
He cooks it.
I don't know whether or not it's stuck to his hand, maybe, or maybe he couldn't. You didn't see it.
I think he was waiting. I think he was like waiting for the fuse to get down a little more.
Okay.
And he just the second one was more successful. The one with Tom Hanks.
Well, the Sean's point too, like the bookending battles, and yet this one feels it's so much smaller, but no less brutal, no less the brutality and the chaos of it is still there, and still very much But you have like 1,000 men versus maybe how many, 20, if that. So you're, but it's still intense. Yeah.
Yeah. The stakes are still very high.
More like 10v10.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But like you said, the brutality is still there. It's not diminished by the lesser amount of troops or anything. Especially going back to the beach scene with the flamethrowers.
Yeah.
Right when they finally break the Nazi line. And he's like, get the flamethrower in there, and the guys are falling out, and they're like, let them burn, don't shoot them. It's like,
Yeah.
Well,
the anger by that point. I mean, the guy, when he's surrendering, is like, what? I can't hear it. And he just shoots him. Meanwhile, he's like trying to surrender. But the anger that these guys had, I mean, the fact that they made it there, and they could have easily been one of the guys on the beach lying there in agony or in pieces,
Yeah. Yeah, and another great piece of acting is Adam Goldberg when Vin Diesel finds the Hitler Youth knife.
Yeah.
And he has that breakdown. So everybody has like these personal, and he's a Jewish American soldier. So this war means a little something different to him, especially like when they're marching the POWs by, and he's like, Juden, and he's like really kind of, how do you like that? How do you like us now? Now that you're getting marched away. And so there's, just great performances. Even Vin Diesel, he's not in it that much, but as Caparzo, again, it's just like these guys really meshed well. And I think having them do boot camp together and spend all that time together really kind of benefited that camaraderie or that comradeship that we would see.
So it's a very natural performance too. He's not really acting there. He's like, add a load of this guy. Yeah,
he wasn't Vin Diesel yet. That's why.
Right. Exactly. Right? So it just felt real, so I love those moments.
And I believe they shot it in sequence as the guys died, just like Platoon, they did that most of it in sequence. And when a guy was gone, he's gone for real. Like it's not like, oh, we're gonna shoot this again and he'll be in the it's it.
Yeah, he's gone from the set. He's done.
Yep.
No more call sheets.
Right.
Yeah, he went home.
See you at the premiere.
See you in the booth for ADR if we have to do any punching in of any voices. All right, one more little bit of trivia. Does anybody know where the beach scene was filmed? Where did they get a beach?
Like Ireland or something?
It was filmed in Ireland. They could not find like the original Normandy beach has been built over with condos, and it was not suitable for that. And they went to many different locations. They went to London, England. They tried to find it, and they finally found a beach in Ireland that resembled it enough. But the problem was, and this is where the filmmaking comes in, is the stretch of beach wasn't very big. And that's why you don't see overhead shots and like sweeping shots, because there wasn't a lot of beach. So Spielberg really kept it tight and intimate, which worked to our advantage because, like I said, it felt like you were there. So there wasn't those overhead views, so you could until the very end when you saw like all the
that is an absolute testament to how skilled he is as technically as a director, because he's always. I mean, even the greats applaud him. Like Scorsese even said, like Steven knows where to put the camera. Because I was so impressed, even on his earlier films, he knew exactly where to put. He's like, I want the camera here, I want that one there, I want 20 cameras. However many cameras he needed, he knew exactly how many, where they go. Even with like Temple of Doom with the bridge, the rope bridge scene. I mean, there's cameras on the bottom. He had to get that coverage. I mean, he's the skill of no, that helps. I mean, that definitely, and I don't think anybody had to tell him. He knew himself. He's telling Jonas Kaminsky this stuff. He's not, but that's amazing. So I'm not surprised that beach was too small, and that because it's all about where you're putting the camera and the placement, and so it was again just an amazing achievement. Like I said, Spielberg was probably let me put this question out, and we'll go around. Kevin, was this the pinnacle for Spielberg? Was this like the crowning achievement?
I think it might be Schindler's List. And only because of relative to what came before Schindler's List, like he was just nothing but blockbusters.
Yeah.
And then he took on this very serious, sensitive subject matter and made pretty much a perfect movie. But I think the two are like these two absolute peaks in his career. Yeah. So I can't say that it's better. It's a much more accessible movie. much more rewatchable.
It's more
but
accessible.
I-
I don't know. I don't know if either of them are like overly accessible, but I get your
you know
point.
what? Kevin's right, because I did write this down. Actually, I was going to say it is one of the most rewatchable war films. I mean, despite how brutal it is, it's just very, we went right through it, and it's just, I can't say the same of like Apocalypse Now or some of these other other films, because they're just so darker or intense or whatever the reason is. It's just this one just, and maybe again, where's that maybe because I don't know, that sentimentality. I don't know, maybe those moments of enlightenment, or when they're making those speeches, it helps. It's kind of a salve, when it moves it along, and you're not in the dark the whole time. But you're just, you're dealing with it as they're dealing with it, right? And those quiet moments, you cherish those because they're, so it definitely helps. But it also, and of course, Williams' score in this movie, I think it's one of his finest because it's so understated. There's not much there. There's only a few themes that he wrote, but it's just, I mean, oh man, the music, and just when it kicks in, it's right at the right moments. It's not overbearing. It's, like some of his movies are like that, but
this is understated where it needs to be. Yeah. Sean, is this a pinnacle for Spielberg? What do you think?
When I was watching it for this time, I was thinking that I'm like, this is one of his greatest films, and I like everybody in the movie. Everybody's performance in the movie is probably something I remember them most for. Like the Giovanni Ribisi, and it's funny. Like a lot of these guys went on to Friends, like Adam Goldberg and a quirky character. And so did Giovanni Ribisi. Like, and I'm like, all these TV actors. Like, there's Bryan Cranston, there's Dennis Farina, there's Paul Giamatti, and I like everybody. Like, I like everybody's performance. It's like when I think of them and that performance, I'm like, oh, they're good actors. They're they're a lot of range. But I think it's definitely one of his best. I would agree.
Yeah, and it's actually when I was watching it today, I kind of realized there's not a lot of dialogue in this film too. A lot of it is faces and reactions and just how they look and how world weary they are, which leads to the very end. Whoever this guy was that played, it turns out that the end character or the beginning character is Private Ryan. And they
looks a lot like him.
Yeah, they do the transition from Matt Damon standing at the bridge, and one of the first early morphs, and it was really done really well. It wasn't cheesy, and it morphs into the old guy. I found myself crying again.
Yep.
When he's like, tell me I've been a good man. I'm like, I'm like trying, like these tears are coming down. I'm like, how did you keep getting me? Like, because it's just, this movie grabs you and pulls you into that. And then at the end, when and Tom Hanks says to Ryan, he says, earn it.
Yep.
Earn this, which kind of sums up like the fight, it sums up World War II is like, these guys went there and made the ultimate sacrifice for something on a scale that was never seen before. It was seen in World War I, but now with modern, 20 years later, 30 years later, technology has changed and the scale has changed. And now this man years later, when he sees Miller's grave, breaks down and kind of, tell me that I've been a good person. I need to hear it. And it got me again.
Yeah.
And you can tell he's never told her the story.
No, yeah.
Because she's like, John Miller, who could that be?
Yeah.
I've never heard that name in my life.
And that speaks to a lot of the veterans that never spoke about this stuff, right? Right, Sean? Yeah. There's a lot of that, right?
Oh yeah. I mean, my grandfather served, never once heard about it. Nobody could tell me anything about his service. Nothing. I have a couple of artifacts he brought back. Never talked about it. My friend's grandfather, one time we play guns. I might have even said this before. And he's like, what's that gun you're using? He's like, we had something like this in the service. And he told us about his experience in the Battle of the Bulge. And we sat there like mesmerized. I was 10. And that's the first time he had ever really talked about it. And he opened up. We're talking, this is like in the 80s. And this was 40 years later. And he talked about the night he got shot. And it was, I can remember though
crap.
to this day, and it's not something he often opened up about. This family's like, he's never talked about that before. And it was amazing to have that experience as a 10-year-old. I wish I could have had it as more of an adult, but I still remember it to this day. And these guys didn't talk about it.
Yeah, and it calls back to what Tom Hanks said at the radar station. He goes, "I don't know how I'm ever going to explain stuff like this to my wife." And a lot of those veterans brought that back of they just didn't talk about it because how could you or too traumatic to try and relive that also to explain that or explain choices that you had to make. Explain things that you did that were out that are not in your character, but in war, all bets are off, right? You do what you have to do to survive and to make it another day. I mean, that's all these guys were trying to do. And you saw it in Band of Brothers, which is a great companion to this.
Yeah.
That you're just trying to make it another day. You're just trying to get through, just to get home. And that's what Band of Brothers kind of touched on that a little bit more. Is like, we just don't want to do anything to mess, to anything stupid that's going to stop us from getting home because we're in the, we're at the end game when the war was ending. And I'm sure a lot of these guys, boys, young men.
Yeah.
They
felt
were 17.
And this was a war that needed to be fought too. I mean, they knew they were doing something important. It was not the same situation in things like Vietnam where things were a lot more corrupt and just why are we here? And it's just like, it was a totally different experience. And you saw how the veterans were treated, because of that in that war. And but this one, I think, when they say the greatest generation, yet they're no less affected by it. I mean, I know there were filmmakers. I mean, you had Hollywood directors that went, like John Huston, and there's a great documentary. I don't know if you guys have seen it. If you haven't, check it out. I think it's on Netflix. It's called Five Came Back, and it's about 5, Hollywood filmmakers, and they went and documented aspects of the war. And one of them was Huston, and he made these really profound essays, like essays about PTSD. And the government, as soon as he got home, they took those films away from him. It's like these will not be shown to the public, the American public. And they were really intense. These guys being treated for that stuff. So to say that these guys weren't affected by that, like people are now, like you hear about it today, of course, everybody, veterans and getting help and all this stuff and advocates and all this stuff. But that wasn't happening back then.
Yeah, all you saw was like the Audie Murphy story and like the glorification of the glorification of
John
it.
Wayne never served.
Was heroic. Yeah,
and that's the thing. That's like he's like the boy American hero, and the guy never served. That's my uncle was a big fan of John Wayne. I'm like, no, but he never served. I mean, so what's So I never cared for those kinds of movies anyway. I never really liked those kind of just straight up action, gung ho, the heroes, win kind of thing. I always like these more intimate little pieces of the war. They shot movies like Longest Day and Midway and things like that. I love the fact that there's a little bit of both in this film. It goes from that major campaign where it's showing you the everyman as perspective, and then it kind of leans into this more personal, intimate setting with these guys and what they're going through. And again, the end, that battle at the end, it just kind of mirrors the beginning, but it's smaller, but no less intense. So All
right. Well, as we wrap it up, we there's a lot of stuff we didn't cover. This is such an expansive movie, but I think we covered a lot of important kind of topics and we leave a lot of meat on the bone for you to kind of go check things out for yourself as well. Do we talk about favorite scenes in a movie such as this, Sean? Are there favorite scenes for you? Is it? I mean, there's a lot of fantastic acting, and we talked about a lot of fantastic acting. This movie wouldn't be what it is without fantastic acting, because it is not an action. The action is like almost like a separate role, almost like a separate actor. The action is. Playing alongside these actors. So is there any standout roles or performances or scenes that kind of really?
I thought about that. I'm like that, it's tough, but the scenes in between the battle, I think are where you get the a lot of real moments. I guess two of them. You said scene, so I would say
you can do
that last scene on the bridge, just with Tom Hanks and him telling him to earn it, and the fact that it's just like if he had just waited like a minute and a half, like the airstrike would have came and he would have made it. And it's like that's what's tough about this movie is like the fractions of an inch, the time, like just how things could just it's like you just stayed in one spot, Yeah. And when he tells him to earn it, and then it goes to the guy and he just says, have I been a good person? Tell me I'm a good man, like that. Yeah, I think that's my favorite part.
I think that's a universal thing too. I think that's what gets people too. Is even if you haven't been in war, just that whole tell me I've done good things, or I just want to know.
Yeah.
Kevin.
Well, I can't remember if this actually happened or if we just joke about it, but my wife and I both claimed that on our first date, as I was signing the bill, I said, "Earn this." She hadn't seen the movie, so she didn't get it.
Oh.
But I think we may have constructed that. But she had never seen Band of Brothers.
That's the Mandela effect on that one, or
yeah. But for the first time watching it this time, there are like 4 or 5 moments where it's almost this Marvel Cinematic Universe level, like references to Band of Brothers, where you'll hear like, "Oh, I wonder what that 101st Airborne is up to. Those fellas must be having quite the adventure. I'd love to see that." And that came out 3 years later, but it was heralded as like Tom Hanks is returning to World War II. You thought he was done. So it was just it represented this enlarging lens of World War II. Mm-hmm. And this is one teeny tiny story of these 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 years, depending on how you count, of just the most massive thing humankind has ever accomplished. Mm-hmm. Like, I think D-Day might be the most beautiful, wonderful coordination between nations and people that's ever happened. And to see this play out on film at an individual human level I'm so happy we have this movie.
Yeah. And actually, to your point, though, watching the movie, you would never get that impression, because person after person they meet, they're like, "What are you doing here? You're way off your spot." Mm-hmm. It's like, well, we took fire. Yeah. The guy made a left turn, and we don't know where we are, and there's people scattered. And it's funny because I think from a higher level of war planning, everything went to plan. But these guys on the ground are like, I'm not even with my regiment, my platoon. We're spread out. Mm-hmm. In real, I shudder to think that there could have been people just like soldiers wandering around and not knowing where they were because they got separated. They're in France or wherever they are.
Yeah.
And on paper at a higher level, the invasion went on, all the planes went off, we took casualties, whatever. But then the guys on the ground was like, well, I don't know where my stick is, or I don't know where these people are, and they could be miles away. So it was, there was a lot of that in the film. It's like, well, Ted Danson's like, well, what's going on? I haven't heard, he didn't get any war updates. So he was asking Tom Hanks, what's happening, So you got a little bit of like the real thing was, these guys were just in the middle of stuff, really not knowing what was going on, except for like orders that they would get. And kind of, that was it, like, here's what you got to do. Stay here or take this town. And that's it, So Eric, scene or performance, that kind of.
Well, to Kevin's point, I totally agree. It's there's so many stories that could be told, and they have. There are dozens upon dozens of movies and books written about this stuff, and it's just it's all, to me, it's always about the little people that mattered. Even like stories about the Europe, like the French Resistance and things like that. I'm all fascinated by these little pockets of people fighting back and resisting. It's not even a major campaign, that it's just as vital and just as important. But to me, the coordination though is like when Danson and Hanks are there, they know exactly the objective. They know exactly what they need to do, the steps they need to take to get to this city after that one, and then after Berlin, we're home. So it's like they have a plan, but it just that plan just could just be blown apart at any time, like just because of the separation. So I don't know. The entire film, is just one experience in that way. Because every scene leads to something else. Like I especially like the scene when they're all the quiet moment. They're all like, "Yeah, you got a load of this guy," and they're like, Oppum and then Hanks is delivering that speech about like I gripe up, and it's like they're all laughing and having a nice moment, and then all of a sudden the rain drops, and then you hear the gunfire as the rain's hitting the leaves and stuff like that, and it's just like you can't tell the difference what's what at that moment, because the more intense it gets, then so I like that those transitions, like they just blend one into the other. So it's hard to say like what. I don't have a favorite scene. You can't. You just can't.
Yeah. I'll go with a piece of cinematography that was very impactful and just really beautiful. After the church scene, right? They go to the church like, we're going to get 3 hours sleep. We're going to leave at night because we're going to march. And the very next scene after the church was a thunderstorm. And they're marching. And you see the shot. It's a faraway shot, and they're marching across the field far away, and they're separated. And you just see the flashes of lightning, and you just see these little silhouettes of these people separated, like walking across at night, like because that's the safest time. That's going to be the safest time to do what they have to do, because they're not doing an invasion. They need to cover ground. They need to get from one place to another. And just that scene after the church of the lightning and them just kind of, and you just see the silhouettes flashing of these people crossing this field is kind of like,
and they're never going to
again, just that epic scale.
And they're going to go home. If they make it home, they're never going to, tell the difference between thunder and lightning,
and gunfire
and gunfire. That's the thing. That's the tragedy of it too. It's like, it's effective. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I think that's going to do it. Let's end by thanking everybody that has served for your service. We thank everybody in the military that has served, is serving, is on reserve, anything. We want to sincerely thank you for your service. Hopefully people seeing films like this really brings home what a commitment it is, and sometimes it's you're paying, like I said, paying the ultimate price. And I think this film is important for I think, even though it's rated R, I think for younger people, I really think they should see it. To learn about history, but also to learn about the sacrifice that these people made, so we can be here today doing a podcast or doing the things we do.
Yeah.
It came down to these events in the 40s, where the world was on the brink and teetering, and things, everything was in the balance, and these young boys went out there, and most of them paid the ultimate price, and we thank everybody for their service.
Absolutely. Yep.
Absolutely.
So that's going to do it for this episode of the 3324 podcast. Kevin Howard, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure. Happy to be here.
The pleasure is ours, sir. Yeah. We appreciate your insights. And
Mr. Sean Grady, of course. Thank you, sir. First one of the new year.
Yep.
Thanks for having me.
Yep.
Yeah,
always a pleasure.
I've got a couple of top fives I have in mind for you. So,
all right,
we're gonna start work. And Kevin, we should get Kevin in on a top five too. So we'll definitely do that. We've got a year's worth of work ahead of us. So we got plenty of episodes. So I'm sure these two fine gentlemen will be taking the seats up again alongside Eric and I, as always. And we thank you for joining us and taking a seat alongside and taking the ride for Saving Private Ryan. If you've made it this far and you're on YouTube and you haven't hit that like button, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. Leave a comment. We reply. Go ahead and subscribe. So this way you get notified of new episodes as well. So that's going to do it. We're going to end it here. So for Sean, for Kevin, and for Eric, this has been Dean asking you to please be kind. And this was a double tape, so you'll have to rewind it twice.
You've been listening to the 3324 podcast with Dean Legiro and Eric Cooper. You can find us on your favorite podcast provider, so please like, subscribe, and rate to become a part of the 3324 family. Your feedback is important, so make sure to follow us on Instagram and Facebook at 3324 Podcast and on Twitter at 3324P to join the conversation.